Okay, everybody, we'll go ahead and start to kick things off here. I think there's a lot of people just joining as we hit the top of the hour. So this is being recorded as well. So anybody who may have responded and didn't get the chance to join from your organization will have access to the recording. This is our ProLinkHFA webinar series. Today, we're focusing on the topic of managing multiple funding sources in ProLinkHFA. So again, we appreciate everybody who's joining us today for this little dive into that area of our functionality. It's about 45 minutes we'll spend together, and here's the breakdown of that time. So I'm going to cover general information here at the beginning. I'm going to hand it off to our presenters for our business presentation and then our software demonstration as well. So I'm Bree Kruder. I'm the Executive VP for ProLink. I'm joined by Kelly Insinius, who's our HFA Senior Product Manager. And then I have Jim Paris, who's our Sales Engineer, on the phone too. Some quick general information for those of you who have been attending our webinar series regularly. This is no new news for you, but we do host this on a monthly basis. Our ProLinkHFA webinar series is on the first Wednesday of each month up until October. And then in November, we'll be hosting our ProLink Tech Live conference, which is actually our user group conference that we offer every year. One of the benefits, kind of silver linings of being remote, is that we opened up that conference for all attendees to join if they'd like to, both clients and anybody else who's interested. That series is a lot more training intensive on ProLinkHFA, and we get into some kind of higher level concepts of our solution, as well as some detailed areas. So that'll be in November. We're going to take December off, and then we'll restart our series in January of next year. The audience for this series is obviously our housing agencies nationally. So those are the neighbors in this room, this virtual room that you are alongside, listening and learning more about ProLinkHFA. And then every webinar that we host, we generally present a business case that can be presented by ProLink representatives. It can be presented on occasion by client representatives. And then we generally will go over a small software demonstration to kind of highlight how that business topic is handled by ProLinkHFA. So this is not a training focused series. This is more of an informative series. A lot of our existing clients will attend this as well, just to keep up with some of the newer functionality that we've rolled out with. And hopefully it's inspiring to you as you continue to make plans for your technology initiatives within your agencies. So who we are, many of you are familiar. ProLink has been in business since 1998. We support affordable housing, state and local finance agencies, tax credit syndicators and investors, developers. We call those our three pillars of the affordable housing industry. So we're really trying to approach the industry on a holistic level, supporting all of those different groups, trying to bring efficiency to the data and information shared between those groups, and building holistic tools to support that effort from that origination stage all the way through asset management and compliance. So that is what our focus is. Our team, we're dedicated technologists to this industry. We have a lot of people, Kelly included, Jim's a little bit newer to ProLink, who have been with our company for a very long time, live and breathe in the affordable industry, really understand the business side of what we're trying to support here. So that is kind of our differentiator as a market leader, as a vendor, really trying to support the evolving needs of the affordable housing industry. Okay, a couple other slides just about us. You can see kind of on the left-hand side, we're highlighting our reach across the market. So we work with large public sector clients. We have 15 state housing agencies and 2 supportive services agencies. So we have a supportive services module built into ProLinkHFA, and we have a couple of supportive services agencies who are represented. And using that module, we also support 5 private sector syndicator and investor clients on ProLink AIM. We participate in a number of industry partnerships. We try to be as active as possible with NCSHA. I'm sure many of you have seen us and know us from those events and sponsorships. We're also part of the NAMA XML Standard Leadership Group. So we actually host the NAMA Leader Group on the XML Standard Group on Procorum. They use Procorum to kind of support and maintain that that group and their advancement. So I think I'll talk more about that in a minute. Industry education is a main focus for ProLink. That's another kind of silver lining evolution that we've had as a business, especially going remote, trying to find really strong opportunities to still connect with our industry, with the market, with people like yourselves, without going to conferences as often these days as we used to. So we did start this webinar series. It's been such a gift to us to kind of have a little more exposure and conversation started and inspired with both clients and others about the things that people are really concerned with around affordable. So it's something we want to stay very current with the topics we discuss, and we appreciate everybody's feedback and support as we've come along this journey. It's something that we will continue to do certainly in the future. We've found it to be very worthwhile for everybody involved hosting this webinar series. We do have a bi-monthly webinar that we host for our homeowner assistance fund, kind of focused, prospects and clients around ProLink Plus, which is another product we offer for emergency relief, emergency housing program relief. So that is happening on a bi-monthly basis. And then I mentioned our ProLink Tech Live user group conference coming up in November as well. Industry partnerships, kind of team partnerships that we have in technology leadership. So Amazon Web Services is a very strong partner of ours. We've started to really utilize a lot of their tools, both in our infrastructure, kind of behind the scenes at ProLink, but also in providing services and additional functionality to our clients. Using them, we integrate with QuickSight, Amazon QuickSight, which is the dashboard reporting tool we have in ProLinkHFA. DocuSign is a strong relationship that we have, which was really kind of inspired with the Homeowner Assistance Fund emergency program in building in that e-signature capability during the application process from homeowners using ProLink Plus. So that is something that we have currently in that system, and we plan to really take what we learned from there and offer it across our product line. Here are a few of our more recent publications, really highlighting our different partnerships, as I just mentioned before, highlighting some of the work that we've done across the industry, both on ProLink Plus, ProLinkHFA, and AIM. So I encourage you to keep up with us outside of just these webinars. Our mailer, our monthly newsletter is a great way to keep up with that news and see what we're up to. Quickly going over the bird's eye view of our system for those who may not be users today of ProLinkHFA. We have ProLinkHFA, represented on the left-hand side of this picture here, and then we have our other products, Procorum and SmartDocs, represented on the right-hand side. So ProLinkHFA is kind of it's a package deal with Procorum and SmartDocs as tools to support that back office system. So you can see ProLinkHFA on the left. We have our agency represented with the desks, the multiple desks on the left. That is your back office system. Procorum is the collaboration portal that we offer to connect you with your clients and external parties, third parties, for that collaboration, that data, receiving that data, going through that application process, going through your compliance process. That's all collected and organized in Procorum, that kind of relationship and a little bit of a messy back and forth that you might have with those contacts. It happens in Procorum, and then we have the data exported using SmartDocs, which is an Excel and Word add-in tool that allows you to map that data and directly, you basically push a button to send it into ProLinkHFA. For example, like an application that you have mapped with SmartDocs can be completed, uploaded to Procorum, Then you push that Smart Docs button to push that data into ProLinkHFA, and then you can actually export that data out into another Smart Docs tool, such as an underwriting spreadsheet. So there's a lot of different scenarios that we work with our clients to utilize Smart Docs, Procorum, and ProLinkHFA to improve and automate your business processes. This is a quick picture of the modules offered within ProLinkHFA. So we have asset management and compliance, we have our single family development, and then we have our multifamily development and bond financing area, which is I think where we're going to be kind of focusing today. We've also built a number of kind of supportive modules, it's supportive services, but other modules kind of that live within ProLinkHFA, including REO. We have our tax credit allocation module, and then supportive services as well. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it off for our business presentation. So I think, Kelly, are you taking over the screen to do that?
I sure am.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Let me go ahead. Bree, confirm for me that you can see my screen now. I'm on, oh, got to click share. Yep. I'm on that same slide that you were on.
I can see it. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks. Thank you, Bree. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Within this business presentation, I'm going to dive right in. We're really going to talk about and kind of unpack the ideas around all of the legwork that's required for you all to do in order to get, you know, these multiple different programs, these multiple different funding sources that are coming at you, to get these things off the ground. You know, there is a lot of work that goes into this for you all to prepare and design these programs to offer out to this industry to create more affordable housing. So we'll unpack all this. We're really going to have a focus into, you know, organization and streamlining to get this program ready, or any program, multiple programs potentially ready, get them off the ground. And then Jim will really show us kind of the exciting parts of, you know, tracking, monitoring, using these programs within ProLinkHFA. So we begin today with kind of a look and a reminder here about, you know, some of these existing programs that we're looking at today. You know, of course, LIHTC, somewhat foundational to, you know, this industry and what we're doing. Home and Housing Trust Fund, big players, CDBG, and these others. And, you know, recognizing that in today's world, as an, you know, a funding agency, we might be giving multiple of these sources to a particular developer, to a particular project or deal, if you will. And how do we manage that? How do we track what we're doing with that developer, what we're doing with that project? How do we track where we're at in terms of our LIHTC allocation for the year, particularly regarding 9%, right? Because there is a ceiling there. You know, our 4% are capped, you know, only at our bond capacity. But yet we still want to keep track and understand, you know, what is going on in that program. You know, Home and Housing Trust Fund, formulary grants, very important to track not only the projects that we're funding, but, you know, where we're at overall in terms of getting that money out the door. So as part of that program administration, you know, we have to define what are these new programs, what are the changes to the existing programs, and get these items ready really for our pipeline team and ultimately our asset management and compliance teams. You know, how is pipeline delivering these programs? How are they getting this out to the industry and getting these dollars really out the door? And then how is AM and compliance going to monitor? Before we really kind of dig into more of the details around, you know, what putting one of these programs together or modifying one of these programs looks like, let's just take a look at and think about, you know, how much is coming at us right now. and kind of, a sign of the times. This is really what we've been seeing over the last few years. And I really don't think this is going to slow down over the next couple years. Just on Friday, we saw from NCSHA, this flexibility that's going to be afforded to us in the ERA $2, right? So, of course, we have, that 75% obligation benchmark that we have to meet in order to realize these flexibilities. Some of us might be there, some of us might not quite be there. Either way, we need to account for and prepare for these flexibilities. How does this change the look of our existing program or programs? How are we going to administer this? We can use these expenses with these flexibilities that are coming at us. We can use the ERA $2 in construction, rehab, or preservation of affordable rental housing projects. Gosh, sorry, I can't say that for some reason. So, just a flavor of how often, how quickly new programs and changes are coming at us. Next, we take a look at, how we're going to utilize these flexibilities that are coming with ERA 2, right? I note that we must be aligned with, one or some of the federal programs that they list here, right? So, that's really, HUD leaning into flexibilities. Let's make this a little bit easier to get these dollars out the door by combining them, right, with maybe a tax credit source, maybe a home source, 811 and the like. So, really, again, leaning into that idea of helping us get the money out the door. But again, this changes potentially the program or programs that we may already have established. And we need to start planning for that. And we want to try to streamline this process because we know what's coming at us, right? Another item that I note, in this flexibility with the ERA $2, is they're notating when, a program conflict could occur only when it is impossible to comply with the requirements of ERA 2 and of the other program. In contrast, if two sets of income or affordability requirements apply to the same units, there's no conflict, okay? So supporting, again, further leaning into that concept of you're probably gonna have 2 and at least maybe 3 sources that you're putting into potentially these new deals that are coming into your agency for funding. Next, we take a look at, again, news from NCSHA, again, on Friday, the same day that we hear about, these ERA 2 updates. We also see updates or previews of, 2023 spending bills. We're seeing quite an increase in CDBG, quite an increase in elderly, and these are just excerpts. I want to remind everybody, these are just excerpts from these news updates that we've received, just highlighting, some of the possibilities of the programs that we probably already have in-house today, and, how those programs are going to be increasing. And again, that fact that we need to concentrate and focus on organizing and streamlining this process of spinning up these programs or updating these programs. In rural housing, we're seeing quite an increase in 538, right? 150 million above 2022, 515, 50 million more than 2022. So, lots of opportunities coming at us, to create and preserve more affordable housing. So let's really dive in. Let's really talk about, defining these programs with these various sources that are coming to us. And again, organizing and streamlining this process. I'm recommending that we begin to create a program definition template. These programs are coming to us frequently enough. Existing programs are changing frequently enough that it's critical that we document what these programs really look like so that our internal teams can execute. Okay. Now, in creating this program definition, we'll want to, of course, store this with the funding source that we create in ProLinkHFA, right? So every program that's coming in, other than LIHTC, we should be defining as funding sources in ProLinkHFA for use in the deals that we're considering for application. So creating this program definition, attaching that documentation in the system, affords us that organization. It's easy maintenance in terms of when updates are coming to that program. It's easy to locate that documentation, make those updates, make sure that all the folks that need it in our organization have that detail. Okay. So let's take a look at kind of some of the areas that this program definition template can consist of. This certainly is not an exhaustive list that we'll look at here today, but I think it's a good outline to get us started. And we will make this PowerPoint available to you all afterwards. And so if you want to refer back to some of these concepts, you'll be able to. So don't worry about trying to scramble and write down all these words. So first, we start with defining the program requirements. The step there is really digging in. Where are these programs coming from? Treasury, HUD? Are they coming from our own state legislature? And what are those kind of minimum requirements that those administering agencies, are dictating for this program? We need to lay that out first, excuse me, to get that understanding of what this program is going to look like. And then we're going to layer in our own agency specific requirements. In some of these cases, we may have existing programs that kind of might dictate or lead us into what other requirements our agency needs to establish for these programs. We may be making adjustments. We might be making updates, right? Like we see with ERA 2. That's kind of our baseline. Get that standard set of requirements that we know are the minimum that we need to operate with. Get those defined, okay? Next, we want to look at and really focus on producing, kind of what we call a term sheet, right? This is for certainly our internal teams, but we also can utilize this and provide this to our marketing and website teams to help, get the news out, push out these new programs, let folks know, what we're looking at and what we're considering with these new programs. And again, I mentioned, that term sheet can be provided on your website, to really kind of drive that information, kind of create that buzz, in your area for, new and updated funding sources, funding programs. Okay, so that's kind of section 1, if you will, defining those kind of basic program requirements, kind of getting the lay of the land or updating. Remember, a lot of what we're seeing today is updating our existing programs. Next, and certainly critical to any of these programs, is defining that program budget, okay? Obviously we need to understand what it is that we're working with in terms of a program. What are we trying to get out the door? And that's going to be critical, right? To what is that overall dollar figure? What portion of that is administrative? For example, with ERA2, I think they're telling us 15% of our grant can be used towards administration. We need to be tracking and utilizing that money, and we'll talk a little bit here about how we might use some of that. But, critical then to finally come to that true number of, what we really are able to allocate out to these deals, to these applications that are coming in. We want to get everything out the door as quickly as we can, okay? So I'm suggesting that we do this with an Excel template because it's going to be a regular update and maintenance that we're doing within this budget. And the concept here, within our program definition, within our program budget, we want to reuse these, right? Every time a new program comes in, whether it's federal, or state level, let's have these templates at hand and utilize these. And it just speeds up our process. Make sure we don't miss anything. And you all that know me know I'm a huge proponent of, I don't want to have to try to remember all the things that I have to do. I want to write them down once and then follow my template. Makes it easier for me. So again, creating a template for that program budget as well. That first tab can be, again, your total program, and I lean towards ERA2 just because, right, that's the most recent update kind of that we're dealing with right at the moment. The first tab where you're defining your ERA2 budget is, overall, what is your grant, okay? Then additional tabs for your annual allocations for that grant. Again, as you create this budget and you're maintaining this and you're updating it, upload that to the funding source in ProLinkHFA, right? If you kind of think about and visualize, and Jim will show this to us and refresh us later on. You think about that funding source record in ProLinkHFA and this concept that now we've got our program definition started, the detail around what we're going to be doing with this program, and now our budget right there, directly associated to that funding source, so that it's easy access. When folks have questions, when we need to make updates, it's right there at our fingertips. Next, we want to identify and record if the program is allocation or formulary grant, just good information to maintain about what these sources are. This is going to help you identify reporting requirements, something to think about really too, within creating these new funding programs. Reporting is a big piece of what we're going to be required to do. So, let's really dig into these details. Is it a formulary grant? Okay, yes, ERA2 is a formulary grant. That's similar to home. That might give us some insight into what HUD is going to want us to report back about performance and outcomes of this program, okay? Next up, in terms of this budget, we want to think about, can we afford staff aug to support this program and other programs? Keep in mind that as we're maintaining these program budgets and we're identifying that administrative usage, from these grants or these allocations, we can then begin to look at that concept of do we pool that money in terms of staff augmentation? Does it make it realistic for us to, maybe take someone on to help out with the various aspects of all these different programs from, an administrative perspective, considering all the programs, that your new programs for your current fiscal year. Another concept, as these new funding sources are coming in, net new, updates to existing, maybe our grant is increasing, our allocation is increasing. We need to think about and tackle our monitoring fees, because ultimately, right, this is new, additional, larger, more complex properties that are coming into our portfolio that we have to monitor for, 26 up to 60 years, maybe even more. So we really do need to consider and look at those monitoring fees where allowable, and look at what we might need to do in terms of increasing those. That revenue could also be considered when we're thinking about staff augmentation. Next up, do we need annual approvals from other departments, such as legal or treasury? As these programs, keep running year to year, what is the involvement that we need from these multiple other teams within our organization? And that can vary depending on the type of program, but let's document that. Let's write that down so that every year with this program, as we receive a new grant, as we receive a new allocation, we can reference right to this program definition, know immediately what to do, okay? Next up, what do we need from our marketing and website teams? Remember, we already talked about, we're probably going to have that term sheet that our website team can put out on our website. What else can marketing do for us to get the word out? And as we're asking that question, what do we need from them? Then what do they need from us? Okay. Documenting these concepts and these needs, again, streamlining this process and making it easier for ourselves going forward. Next up, in terms of this program definition, we take a look at, defining a marketing and website plan. Okay. What are all the materials that we may need to provide to these teams? What does the timing look like in terms of those materials, and, potential review for that? Okay. What have we seen in previous programs that is effective in terms of how early on, we start spreading the word about new programs or updates to existing programs that are being offered by our agency? That timing is critical. Again, we want to refer to what we've seen work previously. And again, let's document it. I don't want to think about how I have to do this every single time I have to do it. I want to tell myself what to do, so that when these changes are coming through, when these new programs are coming through, I have this reference point. Next, we consider defining checklists for the program requirements that you can utilize in your dev deals. Okay. Again, remember that, some of these programs are changing quickly enough that your pipeline team really needs that support. They need that reference point of a checklist to keep up with changing requirements in these programs, as well when they're kind of getting their feet wet and getting used to new programs, and giving them those checklists so that they're really able to be effective in getting these deals off the ground. You also want to take a look at defining new or updated Procorum Work Center templates, right? We may have templates that focus on program types that we're layering in. Do we need to change any of the tasks around there? Do we need to update, program requirement and instruction descriptions within those templates? Again, all these steps, all these items we want to define in this program definition. Next up, we talk about defining reporting requirements, right? This one's a big one. This is a doozy, but the earlier that we start thinking about this and defining this, the better off that we're going to be. Do we need user-defined fields on our deals or on our properties to meet the reporting requirements of these new programs. Let's plan that ahead. Let's work on that up front so that this all comes together, in a timely manner, and nobody's really scrambling when we're ready to launch this thing. Visualize and plan the data views within ProLinkHFA to meet the program reporting requirements. Again, starting early and thinking about this often. We know that we're going to have to report boatloads of data about what we're doing with these programs. How many projects are we creating? How many units are we creating? What types of populations are we targeting and serving? All those types of things we know we're going to have to report back. So let's start planning up front and be successful. Measurement of outcomes requirements. What do the federal agencies want from us for these federal dollars? What is our own home state, legislature want from us in terms of, these federal programs and or any state level programs that are, new or being updated. And then of course, there's always going to be agency specific, right? We need to be able to kind of toot our own horn. We want to be, reporting out on our website, hey, this is what we're doing with this money. And again, planning early just makes this that much easier. Next up, continuing in with this program definition, defining our monitoring requirements. What additions are there to any standard requirements? Can we use checklists to help with updates or with new programs? Do we need to update our Procore work centers for monitoring, right? For asset management and compliance. Again, this concept of increased fees. What does that look like? Is it possible? Can we do this? How can this help our agency? What are the effects on the physical inspections, the file reviews, and the financials requirements in these properties that may have these new or changing funding sources? Do our new programs follow existing federal or agency funding requirements? What if neither of the funding sources exist and or are included in the current deal or property? We've got to think of all of these things, net new, updates, additions, right? All of these things, and what are the effects on those monitoring items that we're doing today? Do we need to include any aspects of this funding source in our risk model? And finally, what UDFs at the property level, right, do we need to define to help with both reporting and possibly compliance requirements, okay? And again, think about the agencies who are going to want to, see reporting from you on these programs. Think about who they are and what they've required from you previously. That is going to help inform you and help you plan about these reporting requirements. If you're a LIHTC allocator, define and plan any updates to your QAP. Are any of these funding sources available now with your LIHTC program? What does that look like? How can folks take advantage of that? Agencies who administer state credits, there may be updates available in your state credits programs. Consider that and document it, okay? Identify and plan funding application updates. Are you using a combined application today, or are there multiple applications that may need updating based on new programs or updates to existing programs? And are those applications Smart Docs mapped, and are you going to need some updates? The answer there should be yes. Again, confirming your UDFs and again, planning for what is needed here so that this process is smooth. Um, Finally here, kind of wrapping up this program definition, annually when you're creating these sources in ProLinkHFA, utilize your workflows to notify and remind all of your internal departments and teams about, this annual renewal. Ask, do they need to review this program in any way? And do they need to approve anything within this program? And again, all of these items are they're standard items, right? They make sense, but let's document it, right? So that number one, anybody that needs to know about this program, how to administer it, it's all contained in one spot. And then going forward, I know better and more easily how to make updates, how to spin up new programs. And finally, a communication plan, right? This is critical. And we've talked to this a little bit earlier on. Internally, how do your teams learn about the details of these new programs? We talked about that term sheet. Your internal folks are going to need more than that. Giving them access to this program definition document. Who should your teams contact if they have questions or they need more information? Do we need lunch and learns, for these internal folks so that, they can get familiar with these new programs and or updates to these programs. Externally, likely your marketing team covers most of this, but they're going to be coming to you for the information and the detail that's needed to communicate this program out to your communities. Should you do a webinar, right? Kind of like what we're doing here today to introduce your programs, to share updates, to encourage and guide developers to utilize these sources that you're offering. Should you consider a pilot program with your trusted and well-known, developers and participants? This is a great way to test out, the ins and outs and find any holes in your program definition. Okay, guys, that's really all I have today around that program definition. Again, thanks for listening. And these slides will be available so that you can take some of these ideas back and put them to use in your agencies. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Jim now, and he will do a software demonstration for us. Jim, you're on mute.
Thank you, Kelly. That was some good information there. So guys, I know we're at about 3:43 Eastern time now. We are going to probably continue on through the end of the hour. But if you guys need to jump off, no worries. We're going to record this meeting again, as we mentioned before, and we'll make sure you have access to it if you need to have access to it. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. And I'm just going to show you a few things on how you can manage different funding sources within a deal. And then I'm going to go into a little bit of information on how you can monitor funding sources kind of across your whole agency. So here, I'm at one of my main pages. I'm kind of just looking at my portfolio overview here on my main screen. But if I want to get in and see the funding sources on an individual deal, I'm just going to go over to my development activities. I'm going to go to my Garden Court Apartments deal for purposes of this demonstration. And then over on the left navigation within my deal, I have my deal entities, deal properties. But for today, I'm going to go into deal budget and into deal funding. So one thing I always like to mention as I'm going through ProLinkHFA, and sometimes the way I set things up is on purpose to make the data not add up, just to kind of illustrate to you that in a number of places within the ProLinkHFA system, including the deal funding page, if the data doesn't necessarily add up, if the data doesn't really makes sense with itself, most of the screens within ProLinkHFA are going to send out some kind of warning message. This doesn't lock you out of anything. It doesn't lock the system. It's just kind of a friendly notification telling you, in this example, hey, your total funding amount doesn't actually equal your total development costs. So you might want to find some money elsewhere to contribute to those development costs, or go back into your deal budget and maybe find some room in your deal budget. But this kind of warning message exists in a number of different areas within ProLinkHFA, just to kind of give you the peace of mind that the data you're inputting there, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't add up, ProLinkHFA is going to let you know. So here I have my funding sources for this deal. There's 5 different funding sources, and in this specific instance, what I can do is I can go drill into one of these. And one thing I do mention as I'm going through ProLinkHFA and I'm showing you all this data that I can record, one thing I like to say to people is, don't get overwhelmed by the amount of data that you see in here. You do by no means have to go in and manually enter all of this data. We do have our Smart Docs technology, as you can see here, that can map data from the funding application and actually send it right into ProLinkHFA and populate all those data fields from the funding application, so you do not have to go back into ProLinkHFA and re-enter all of this information. You can also do some cool things like you can retrieve the data out of ProLinkHFA into the funding application, maybe make some changes and send it back. It's a pretty cool system that we have set up there with Smart Docs. But now that I'm in this funding source, one thing I'll point out to you is really the only required field is the funding source name. So you can see this is agency loan funds, but we do encourage folks to, at a minimum, also put in the amount of funding, so you can kind of keep track of, does my funding amount match my deal budget, and you can run data views later on to kind of see where's my funding being used, how much has been used so far, how much is left on these funding sources to be allocated to other properties or other projects. But we do recommend to at least do that, and to really fill out as much as you can, so you can have better access to running reporting from a global level when you go into data views and utilities. Next thing I'm going to move on to is I'm just going to give you kind of an idea here of how you can go in and see globally kind of how your funding sources are being allocated across the agency, across your different projects. So what I'm going to go to is utilities here. And under utilities, I'm going to go to my fiscal year allocation tracking. And now what I can do is I can see all of my funding sources and programs associated with that particular fiscal year. And then I can see, all right, so my agency loan funds for the year 2021, I currently have a budget of $300 million. I've only closed about 2.5. I have some set aside for some other things. And then I have about 282 million remaining. So this can give the finance team a really good snapshot of, hey, what funding sources have been used, how much of them have been used, and how much is there left to allocate to other projects throughout the rest of this year. And then what I can do on each of these is I can actually drill in and I can see the actual deals that they're associated with and how much is going to each of these deals. So really quick way to pull that kind of global agency-wide data and on all of my different funding sources to help me figure out how much is left, where things are being used, and all that fun stuff. Now I'm going to go to data views, show you some more information that you can run from kind of a global perspective here when it comes to that deal funding. So here I have my deals by funding data view, deals by funding source data view. And what I can do here is I can see all the different deals and the associated funding sources with those deals. I really like our data views functionality. I've been selling software for about 8 years, but I'm pretty new to ProLink. And one of my favorite things about ProLink system compared to some other software companies I've worked for is just how strong and robust these data views are in terms of how you can sort, filter, group, cut and slice, and add different data points into them. So for example, if I want to go into a specific funding source, and I want to see, okay, how is this funding source being used? I can go into my view manager and I can kind of move things around and manipulate things pretty easily to pull up what I want and pull up kind of an idea of how am I using this specific fund? Where is it going? What cities, counties, or program types are they going to? So I'm going to go to my deal. I'm going to go to my view manager here. And let's say I want to go in, I want to add some more fields here so I can get a better idea of where is this money actually going. So I'm going to go, let's say I want to see what cities and counties are getting funding. And then let's say, for example, property use. I want to add those in. I'm going to go ahead and save and close. And then I'm going to have those extra columns here. And let's say I just want to focus on one specific funding source. I can turn this filter grid on or off, and then I can type in the source name. So let's say I just want to look at these agency loans. I can look at my agency loan program and see how much is being allocated to what. And then if I want to go in further and filter this by year as well, let's say I just want to look at 2021. Now I have a really clear picture and snapshot of these agency loan funds, what cities and counties are getting this funding, and what types of properties are getting this funding. So then I can go and kind of be prepared for my executive meetings where I have to report and speak with maybe people from the governor's office about, hey, how are we taking this funding and where are we putting it into? What cities and counties and communities within my state are benefiting from this funding program. So a lot of different things you can do here with data views on how to cut and slice things, but I know we're a little bit over time now, so I'm going to kind of end things with my demo here, and I'm going to hand it back over. I think it's either to Bree or Kelly who's going to close out the webinar for us.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to share the slide deck one more time so you guys can see. Oh, sorry. I hope you can hear me better now. Please confirm, Jim.
We can hear
you.
Okay,
yes.
good. Sorry. Good. Took my mic off. I just wanted to reshare the slide deck. Hopefully you can see it now. This is just to make you aware of our next event. So our ProLinkHFA next webinar series will cover underwriting best practices, preliminary screening of a project, market risk assessment, borrower risk assessment, project risk feasibility, and sustainability analysis. So that is the next topic. You can see the group that's going to be involved in that. We have Ryan, myself, and Jim presenting that next webinar. So please sign up. The registration link may be available already. If it is, then perhaps we've shared it in the comments, or we can, so that you can go ahead and register there. Thank you everyone for your time today. I appreciate the extra time you've given us since we went a little over today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.